as an outsider looking in at, a woman with ADHD, oftentimes they are highly successful. Oftentimes they are doing a million things. Oftentimes they look like they are doing well, but you go into their house and it's probably a disorganized mess. It's probably chaotic, or their brain is that chaotic and has 47 tabs open. Once I had kids and I had to executive function for them and for their needs and plan and organize and executive function for all of us, that's when the balls that I was juggling were starting to drop, and I had to figure out which ones I could let drop. Welcome to All Things Sensory by Harkla,
your go-to podcast for practical insights on sensory processing and development from an occupational therapy perspective.
One thing a lot of parents don't realize about kids' multivitamins is that the formula decisions really matter. Not just which nutrients are included, but how the entire supplement is designed for kids who may be more sensitive. That's something that stands out about Best Part Kids Multivitamin. The formula was developed with registered dietitian Britton Coleman, who works closely with families raising kids with selective eating and sensory sensitivities. For example, iron was intentionally left out of the multivitamin. Iron is really important, but it can often interfere with the absorption of other minerals, and it often creates strong taste issues, which can make supplements harder for kids to tolerate. Instead, the formula focuses on nutrients that can be taken safely every day as a foundation. It's also free from common allergens like dairy, gluten, soy, peanuts, and tree nuts, which helps make it a safer option for kids who already have sensitive systems. And the nutrients are included in a bioavailable form, meaning they're easier for the body to absorb and use. So the whole idea behind Best Part is really simple. Create a multivitamin that works with real families and real kids, especially those who are a little bit more sensitive. If you want to learn more about Best Part Kids Multivitamin, you can check it out in the link in the description.
Hey there, welcome back to All Things Sensory by Harkla. I'm Rachel. I'm a pediatric occupational therapy assistant, certified primitive reflex clinical specialist, mom of 2, and for the longest time, I thought I was disorganized. I thought I was a hot mess. I thought I couldn't do anything right. And it turns out I found that my brain was actually wired just a little bit differently than the average brain. I've shared about this story in the past. There are a few updates that I'm going to share with you today. But this is my ADHD journey. This is sharing more about ADHD in women, especially moms, who can maybe relate with me and feel heard and feel understood a little bit more. Or maybe you've been thinking you've been struggling, and this could be potentially a factor that's causing you to feel like you're struggling in motherhood or business or work or life, just in general. So let's get into it. So like I mentioned, we're going to briefly break down ADHD in women, ADHD in moms, and what that can potentially look like. And I'm going to share a little bit more of an update as to what my life looks like with the ADHD side of things going on, how that impacts me professionally as a therapist, as a mom, and kind of what some of the things that I've been doing in this journey to help me perform my best and kind of understand myself as best as I can, which is not easy. So as a pediatric therapist, I obviously have worked with children with ADHD for a long time. And I think in my head, I just figured I had it pinpointed as to what it looked like in kids. And it never occurred to me that it could also be something that I struggled with. Now, it wasn't until we interviewed Dr. Ashley from Cup of ADHD that I remembered this moment distinctly, looking at Jessica and saying, "Oh my word. She's literally describing me." And I think the reason why I'd never thought of it was just because I thought that I was successful, I was learning, I was thriving, and I never put 2 and 2 together. But there's been some things that have happened over the years that kind of made me go down that rabbit hole. And I actually ended up working with Dr. Ashley and going through the ADHD diagnosis process. And this was January of 2023. So I had a 1-year-old who rarely slept. And I was in the thick of the 2 under 2 life, which was also really hard on me. And I also had some health stuff that I was figuring out, and I share all this on my Instagram. So I'm like, why not share it here too? I had implants, and I actually thought that those were causing me to have some ADHD symptoms. I had some gut issues. I had some hormone challenges. Just after having babies back to back, I was like, wow, I don't feel my best. So fast forward to November of 2024, I got my implants taken out, changed, so many things of my diet, my lifestyle, my nutrition, and it is now early 2026, and I still am struggling, but I know what's going on. I understand myself so much more. I can recognize what an ADHD kind of issue is and what a challenge is, and I can navigate that appropriately. So let's get back into it with women specifically with ADHD. It presents so much differently than a child with ADHD. We think of ADHD and we think of hyperactivity. We think of kids who can't sit still. They're bouncing off the walls. They can't focus. They can't get their homework done. They're naughty. I am not that way in a lot of ways. And in women, it almost presents more as that mental hyperactivity, that to-do list that's overwhelming. Sometimes, women with ADHD are described as lazy or anxious or too emotional or an overachiever or quirky. And it often doesn't present as the typical hyperactive busyness that we see it in kiddos. It's more of like a mental hyperactivity. And we often see that connection with poor executive functioning skills. So challenges with initiation, challenges with the monotony of daily tasks, challenges with my issue was always getting the mail and doing the things with the mail, depositing the checks, opening the mail, organizing it, doing what we need to do with it. And as I've learned over the years, it's just the chemical imbalance in the brain is making daily activities really hard to do. So that's why, as an outsider looking in at, a woman with ADHD, oftentimes they are highly successful. Oftentimes they are doing a million things. Oftentimes they look like they are doing well, but you go into their house and it's probably a disorganized mess. It's probably chaotic, or their brain is that chaotic and has 47 tabs open. So I think that's the misconception with ADHD in women. And I think specifically why it hit me so hard after motherhood was because I could do the executive functioning tasks that I needed to do before becoming a mom. I could do them. I could cook the meals. I could get to work. I could do my notes. I could get the things done that I needed to get done. Once I had kids and I had to executive function for them and for their needs and plan and organize and executive function for all of us, that's when the balls that I was juggling were starting to drop. And I had to figure out which ones I could let drop, which sucks. I hated letting balls drop. And now that I'm, 3 years into this journey, I think it's easy to understand a little bit more about why I start 47 businesses and why I get excited to start a new project. And then I lose the excitement once I have to get into the nitty-gritty of the monotony, and why I say yes. And then I get to the project or the activity and I'm like, I don't actually want to do this. So I've had to really learn about my priorities. And this year specifically, I am taking charge of my safe place, and I am making sure that my family comes first and I come first. And I am kind of like protecting that and really taking the time to learn about what I need to take off my plate, what I need to put on my plate, what I can do. And it's definitely not perfect, but we're getting there. So when it comes to ADHD and moms specifically, because that's who I hopefully I'm connecting with right now. I'm connecting with all of you moms who are like, I'm struggling and I don't know what's going on. I'm going to list off some things and I want you to think about if you resonate with these, or if they're kind of like that aha moment that I specifically had back in 2022. I think it was late 2022 that I started realizing that I was struggling. So first one is that mental overload. Is your brain constantly going? Can you turn it off at night? Or do you lay down in bed and you're ruminating on all of the things, all of the interactions you had with people, your to-do list that you have to do in 3 weeks? Is that kind of when your brain starts going on all of the things? Do you struggle with following through with those monotonous tasks? The dishes, the packing the lunches, the writing the bills or writing the checks or paying the bills or checking the mail and doing the follow-through tasks that need to be done, that organization. That was a big one for me. Do you struggle with that time blindness? Are you chronically late to everything, even though you have the best intentions of getting up early, starting, maybe working out in the morning, and, things just kind of go from bad to worse, and you have these high expectations of yourself, but you keep missing the mark. And I know for me personally, I used to be early to everything. Now it's extremely hard for me to be 15 minutes early. As much as it stresses me out to be late, it's so hard to get everyone's needs met in the morning and where we all need to be and packed and organized. It's fine. We're doing great. Okay. Emotional regulation challenges. Do you feel like you are up and down and all around and, maybe snapping at people when you don't mean to be snapping at people? That can be another thing that we need to look into. Sensory overload is another one. I don't know about you, but at the end of the day, when my sensory cup is full, there's too much noise, there's too much tactile input, everyone's crawling on me and screaming and yelling, and I am hot on top of it. Maybe it's the summertime and I'm hot and sweaty and I can't handle it. And I literally feel like I'm going to explode. If that is you, let's talk about that. Another one, maybe you feel that constant mom guilt. You feel like you're comparing yourself to other moms. Social media is a terrible place for us ADHDers because we see the perfectly organized, just neat houses that probably aren't in reality like that, but we think, well, what the heck is wrong with me? My house doesn't look like that. I've got clutter everywhere. Even though maybe you have like kind of one of those ADHD spurts at the end of the day and you focus on organizing your pantry when you have 47 other things that you need to be doing. But in that moment in time, your pantry has got to be organized. Yep. Been there. And if you feel like maybe you were a little quirky and a little ADHD before you became a parent, and then things really spiraled and your executive functioning skills kind of went down the drain, that's probably a sign that you need some support. And that's why it's so important that we're talking about this. I would literally have no idea if it wasn't for just the work that I do and learning from other people. No doctor ever said, Rachel, are you doing okay? You seem a little scatterbrained, a little disorganized. That was never a thing, because even, on those checklists that you have to do when you go through the ADHD diagnosis, you have to do the checklists from your childhood. You have to have a partner or a spouse do the checklists, and that was really eye-opening for me because I never stopped to think about my childhood and the things that I did and struggled with. And it was like, oh, I always have had some little things that I struggled with. And it was really eye-opening to see my husband's responses on the checklist and for him to notice that I was struggling. I was like, what? You noticed that? So I think that it's great to have these conversations, but I also think it's really great to actually work with someone and validate and get get the help that you need, because I worked with Dr. Ashley for several months and she gave me some really good tools to use. And I think it would be great to talk about some of those things. If you are noticing that you're struggling and you need some tips, let's talk about some of those things that you can do immediately. So a few quick strategies that I have learned that have been really helpful. Prioritizing sleep. Getting some good sleep is going to be essential for your brain. Prioritizing protein is another really, really big one. You should be getting, I want to say, I don't want to normalize this for everyone, but I want to say like around 100 grams of protein per day. That's going to be a game changer for you. And trying to limit and reduce the processed foods. I know everyone says that, but trust me, just try and see how we do. The next one is some high intensity exercise. And this can look different for everyone, but I think just in the morning, getting up and getting going and getting your heart rate elevated can be really helpful for boosting some of that dopamine. A few jumping jacks, a few squats, a few push-ups, 10 minutes, doesn't have to be crazy. If you have a walking pad, if you can go outside and walk, those are going to be really helpful in the morning time as well. Going along with that, sunshine, getting outside first thing in the morning, getting that sunlight on your bare eyes, no sunglasses, maybe drink your coffee or your tea outside if possible. I know it's cold here right now, but we still prioritize that and go outside and get that sunshine. At least for a few minutes, let the sunshine penetrate your eyeballs, okay? Beautiful. We also had Dr. David Noel on the podcast because I had taken one of his courses on ADHD and I had to have his expertise on the podcast. And I recommend going to listen to his podcast. It's exceptional. But one thing that I learned from him that I'll never forget, and I kind of laugh about it, is he specifically said either have an assistant who's really organized. I think he said have a Spitfire assistant, something like that, or find a partnership with someone who is opposite of you and who can help keep you organized. And I laugh about it now because Daniel, my husband, is literally so helpful when it comes to my executive functioning skills. Like we have just like opposite skill sets and it works so well. I have a team around me who keeps me organized and who helps me do what I do well, right? I am good at a few certain things and I have a team in place that helps me do those things well and really hone in on my expertise, because I had to come to the conclusion I can't do it all and I can't do it all well. So I'm going to focus on what I'm good at. And I have, just a really supportive team and family around me to help where I struggle. I do recommend listening to those two podcasts, Dr. Ashley, Dr. David. Listen to those ones. I'll put them in the show notes so you can listen to those. But I also want to chat briefly about reframing ADHD, especially in women and moms, because for me, this has been really helpful to again hone in on what we're good at and hone in and just identify our strengths and superpowers with ADHD versus the things that we're struggling with. Because especially with our clients and our kiddos with ADHD, gosh, they hear negativity. I can't remember the percentages off the top of my head, but it's just, don't quote me on this, 80% negativity of, don't do this, you're doing that wrong throughout the day, and 20% positivity. And we need to completely shift that. So ADHD is truly a superpower in a lot of ways, because oftentimes moms and women are extremely creative and they're extremely good business owners, just probably not good at all aspects of being a business owner, but the creative side of things and the empathy is huge when it comes to women with ADHD. The other thing that's really cool is the ability to solve problems and solve problems creatively. And if something's not working, most of the time there's a way that we're able to figure it out and we can make it happen. And I feel like women with ADHD are the most driven, wild, exciting, impulsive, just fierce people. And it's really cool to know that even though we're a little quirky and odd and impulsive, that people love that side of us, and people love our big, obnoxious, I'm speaking for myself here, big, obnoxious personalities, because that's what makes us us, and that's what makes us good at what we do. And remembering that you are not a burden on anyone. Your kids are going to look up to you. If you have kids, they're going to look up to you and say, gosh, my mom is really cool. And she is unapologetically herself. And yeah, she struggles with making my lunch sometimes and getting me to school on time, but dang, she is cool. And I want to be like her when I grow up. So I hope you remember that, and I hope you take that away from this episode. If you're feeling down on yourself and you're like, I can't do anything right, you are doing the best that you can with the information that you have, and you're going to take this information and you're going to run with it, and it's going to be very, very cool to see what you do. So if you're listening to this and you are thinking that you might be a little ADHD, I want you to either reach out to Dr. Ashley or find a psychologist who specializes in women with ADHD. I want you to talk to your doctor about your concerns. There's free checklists online that you can do, and you can kind of go through a checklist and see, yeah, I do struggle with that, or no, I'm doing okay, and kind of get an idea from there. It's kind of like our primitive reflex checklist and our sensory checklist. So I recommend kind of starting to dig into that. If you are a mom, or if you're a woman with ADHD and you feel validated by this conversation, I'm so glad to hear that. And I appreciate you all being here and listening to me word vomit about my experience. I think that was one of the most helpful things for me learning about this, was hearing other women, specifically other women in business, who learned that they are wired a little bit differently and they can still be successful, and learning what works for them. Obviously, it's not a one size fits all approach, but learning about what works for them was really helpful. So I'm hoping that I can pay it forward and help some other moms and women who might be struggling. So thank you for being here. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure you like this video, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a thought. I appreciate you all. If you're listening on Spotify or another podcast platform, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any more episodes. And follow us on Instagram, Harkla_family, as well as All Things Sensory Podcast. Can't wait to connect with you there, and maybe share this episode with someone who needs it, in a good way, of course. And we'll plan on seeing you here next week for another episode. Okay, bye. Thank you so much for listening to All Things Sensory by Harkla.
You can find links and resources from today's conversation right in the description of this episode.
If you want to connect, ask a question, or share what resonated with you, come find us on Instagram at All Things Sensory Podcast. We'd love to hear from you.
As a podcast listener, you get 10% off your first order at Harkla. Just use the code SENSORY at checkout, or head to harkla.co/sensory to get started.
We're so grateful you're here and honored to be a part of your journey.
Everything we share here is for educational purposes only and reflects our professional experience. It isn't medical advice. Please consult your healthcare provider for support specific to your child.
Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.